Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into this special roundtable discussion on women in comics. Just saying the words women in comics, some may think of names like Wonder Woman or Black Widow, but we want to focus on the women working in comics, the artists, the writers, the editors, and everyone in between. The Louise Simonsens to the Karen Bergers to the Kelly Sue DeConnicks, the women of the comic book industry have not only helped to diversify comics, but also taken a stand to fight for fair representation, including the way women are portrayed in the medium. Some say that it's a male-dominated industry, but women have definitely made their mark, one that cannot and should not be ignored. And that's what we're talking about here today. I'm joined by four very special guests from across the comic book industry. We have cosplayer and comic book creator Anna Mia.
Hi.
Acting marketing manager at Top Cal, Lisa Wu. Sales coordinator from Boom Studios, Harley Salbacka. And communication specialist from Aftershock Comics, RuthAnn Thompson.
Hello.
Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having us all. It's such an honor to be here with all of you ladies.
Yeah, ditto. All of the ditto.
I love that. So before we jump into these questions and kind of get our discussion rolling, I want to go around and get a little bit more background on each of you and kind of talk about what you guys do and what your roles are in the comic book industry. So Harley, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I have been in the comic book industry in multiple forms for a few years now, getting close to a decade. So I actually ran a comic book shop here in Los Angeles for about 4.5, 5 years as a manager. And it was so much fun. I will say I loved being on the floor with people for comics. And then I worked at Humanoids as well, doing both sales and marketing. And now I'm over at Boom Studios doing sales for them. So I've been around for about 10 years and I just love comics. I'm enjoying it.
You have a really diverse knowledge of the field as well.
I do. I always joke that I've done like almost everything except for editorial when it comes to comic books.
Quite the resume going. RuthAnn, how about you?
Yeah, so as a lot of the women here, I started off as a fan, and my first comic book convention was in 2007 for New York Comic Con. Then I just fell in love. So me and my business partner, Kristen Simon, created a company called Geek Chic Promotions, and we started doing all of the parties and release parties for comic books as well as Comic-Cons. And then we ended up doing the program and paneling for over 5 conventions a year. That's actually how I met Anna Mia for the first time. We hired her on for the New Jersey Anime Fan Fest years ago. And then from there, I moved into doing the ad sales as well as online sales for different ad space, including for DC Comics, Archie Comics, and several others. And now I've been, for the last 3 years, working with Aftershock Comics, as now I was just promoted to their communication specialist. So I work with the retailers as well as our ambassador program, where we have 45 ambassadors across the US and Canada to promote all of our Aftershock titles. And then I produce and host up to 3 live streams a week for Aftershock as well.
Wow, busy lady.
Yeah, I try.
And Lisa, what about you?
Well, I actually started out as a comic book journalist, and that's how I kind of got into comics and then the industry. And it was a lot of fun. And then that actually attracted the eye of Dave & Buster's, believe it or not. And I started becoming a marketing coordinator with them. And I worked with a lot of the community, especially in Virginia Beach, and with con goers, con conventions, nonprofits and things like that. That actually attracted the attention of Aftershock Comics, actually. And they were actually just starting out, and they needed somebody to build a community around the brand. And they thought that was the perfect person to do it. And then I started to kind of venture out a little bit more. And then I created my own business, and I started working for different companies and individual creators. Right now I'm working with Top Cow mainly, but I also have other clients such as AWA Studios, and I'm actually working on a few Kickstarters as well with other creators. So it's been a lot of fun to be able to see behind the scenes and what goes into a comic and work with a lot of fans, retailers, and press at the same time.
My goodness. You guys are very impressive group. Mia, why don't you finish us off?
So for me, I have always been, a comic book fan, and then I became a cosplayer in 2008, and started really kind of getting big into that. From there, I became a writer for Otaku USA magazine, covering various cosplay articles. And then I started working for PREVIEWSworld and Game Trade Media and doing video hosting for them. And then I added on, let's see, now I'm writing for Cosplay Central, also doing a lot of cosplay writing on various topics. And just last year, I dove headfirst into the comic book industry, and my first comic was released in comic shops last week.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And I have also done an Indiegogo comic, a one-shot, and that's all with Dynamite. So, dipping my toes in, not even dipping, like headfirst into the comic book industry. So it's been a crazy adventure and a lot of learning. So being on this panel with everyone, I'm just like fangirling because it's a whole new industry and all new people, and yeah.
So ton of comic book prowess here among us. So I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about what it means to be a woman in comics. So let's unpack that. And we'll start by discussing where your inspiration comes from. So who are some of the women in the comic book industry that have influenced you or inspired you? And Lisa, I'll kick this over to you first.
There's so many. There's so many that have kind of broken the ceiling for all of us to be able to do whatever we want and get the respect that we need. And it's been so supportive. But the one person that I really wanted to highlight was Celine Thomas. She is the CEO of Frank Miller Inc. Frank Miller and her, I think, met during the production of 300. And I've met her several times. She's just a very impressive lady. And to have somebody, like that Frank Miller trusts to take care of his business and all aspects of his business is just incredible. So I love her. And she's not just, in the industry, but she's like a mom and she's balancing her life. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Representing all of the facets of what it means to be a woman.
Exactly.
RuthAnn, what are your thoughts?
Well, there's so many. I mean, the list could go on forever, but I first started reading comic books with X-Men. So Louise Simonsen was the first that I took a lot of inspiration from, followed by other greats like Gail Simone, both of which that I was really lucky to have the distinct pleasure to work with, creating and moderating panels for over a few years. And then there's wonderful women that I'm working with currently, like there's Marguerite Bennett, Stephanie Phillips for creators and writers, as well as just baller female retailers like Jen King, Jen Haynes. And for me personally, the woman in comics that gave me my start in the comic book industry and continues to drive me and support me and root for me every day is one of my best friends, Kristen Simon. She's been in the industry for almost 20 years with editing comics from Image, Shadowline, Come to Us, Netmarble, so many more. She just always amazes me, and I can't wait to see what she does next.
Absolutely. What about you, Mia?
So I'm with RuthAnn. Like Gail Simone is someone I have followed for a really long time, and she is great on social media. I love her. And then Fiona Staples is someone that I've also admired in comics as an artist. But my one that who's really inspired me is Blake Northcott. I followed her from before as just a cosplayer, following this, writer who's done so many different things. She's written her own comics. She's written for, some major titles and characters. She's also written for Evanescence. She did a comic for, which is crazy to me. It's so cool that she has done all these things. And then she's got, I think, a show coming out based on one of her works. So, she is my, I want to be Blake Northcott. So, she is, my inspiration. And so, it's kind of neat to have talked to her in the past as a cosplayer, and now I talk to her as, a writer. And it's just a cool feeling to be able to have someone that has inspired me for so long, and now I feel like I can talk to them from a little bit more of an equal perspective, I guess.
Sure. That's fantastic. And Harley, who are some of your choices?
So it's so hard when I was thinking about who inspires me in our industry. I started off obviously as a fan and running a shop. So a lot of it early on was creators. And I think the creator that made me stop and go, whoa, women could do anything they want in comics if they just do it, was Kelly Sue DeConnick, who was for me, the moment that she changed Ms. Marvel to Captain Marvel, which Miss Marvel had basically been Captain Marvel for a really long time, but wasn't allowed to be called that. Her changing that was like a moment for me and like the comic book world and like in my comic book fandom. And she's done a lot of amazing things and huge strides for women in the industry, along with like Gail Simone and so many others. Like I was trying, like you can't make, if I made a list, it'd be like as long as both my arms put together. But I will say also, I think what inspires me day to day in the comic book industry is watching the women that I work with, like watching the women that I work with, because at least for our sales and marketing team at Boom, it's mostly women, watching all of them just being phenomenal at what they do. And it's just inspiring for me to watch like on a day-to-day basis. So it's lovely with all these amazing women we have at the, like closer to the top, but I also have to say I'm inspired by the women that are around me in my industry directly.
Fantastic. I know that's a little bit of an intentionally difficult answer. Like pick one person out of all of these hundreds of inspiring women. So let's take that a step further and dig into comic book characters themselves. Oftentimes, oh, hold on, we have a comment here really quick. Sheldon says, hello all, glad to have you here. Glad to be here, Sheldon. Thank you for tuning in. Doesn't say Sheldon, that says D. Brad. I don't know why I said Sheldon. Sorry, Brad, my bad.
I think that's actually a new comment from D. Brad Gibson saying, I appreciate the discussion and look forward to hearing it. So thank you to both of you.
I totally fumbled that.
I got you.
Creed says,
hey Creed, good to see you. Yes, he follows a lot of our Aftershock live streams. Good to see you.
Natasha Cannon Daleks from our Toy Chest News. She says this panel's super impressive. #goals.
Hi, Natasha.
Thank you all for joining us and for tuning in. And the conversation's just getting started, so y'all have gotten here at the right time. So we're gonna take a look at comic book characters now and some of our favorites there. So oftentimes female comic book characters themselves can be a source of inspiration for women, rising to every occasion and showcasing a strength and confidence that rivals their male counterparts. Think Wonder Woman, Black Widow, Captain Marvel, and so many others. So let's talk about our favorites. So who are your favorite female leads in comic books, and what do you feel like you connect with most about those characters? And we'll start with our resident comic book creator, Mia.
So my all-time character is Buffy, and I love the direction that Boom's going with her right now, because she's always that, that very strong female character, but I also love, like, you see that in the cast of like Rat Queens, Aphrodite 9 from Top Cow. I love these very strong female characters, and now that I'm getting to write Betty Page and kind of play around with her character, I'm really wanting to emphasize the idea that a woman can be, she can own her sexuality and be sexy and playful, because that's what Betty Page was. I mean, she was a pinup model in the 1950s, and I don't want to ever deny her that, because that's part of who she is, and we should be able to own, who we are as women and sexual beings. And but I want her to also be seen as smart and serious and just as strong as any male character in comics. So that's my big focus on her as a character, is making sure that she still maintains that ability to be sexy but also be taken serious, which I think women should be.
Absolutely. And that's really interesting to hit that duality, because it does exist. You are both things, and you can be and you should be, and they don't cancel each other out. All right, so let's go over to you, Harley. What are some of your choices?
Oh, goodness. So this is hard. Because when I ran a shop, I read everything. So I had to narrow it down. So my top few are Saga, Alana, because literally I feel like when I first read Saga, I remember just being like, oh my gosh, I feel like this is like a true woman. This is exactly how I act sometimes, or my friends act, and I felt like I knew her, which I hadn't quite felt like before in comics. So definitely her, plus Fiona Staples' art. Scarlet Witch, because she is the most powerful person in the Marvel Universe, really, think about it, which is amazing, because as we've seen with women, superheroes, I think it's only 26% of superheroes are women, which is a very small amount. It's something around there. So having one be so all powerful and not get too evil too often, solid. And then I have to call out our girl at Boom, Erica Slaughter, because She's just awesome. If you haven't read Something's Killing the Children, A, where have you been? B, you'll fall in love with Erica. She's just totally a badass. And then I think my all-time favorite has to be Babs, has to be Batgirl, because I think what is so unique about her is she doesn't have any special powers. But man, does she overcome challenges. Like, we literally watch her get paralyzed, and instead of being like, I'm giving up, I'm not going to be your hero anymore, she gets more badass and becomes Oracle. Like, she takes every challenge and is like, challenge accepted, I'm going to level up instead of surrendering, which I think is just amazing. I think just seeing all these amazing women do unbelievable things, it just makes us all feel great, right, about being able to achieve our own goals. So those are my top 4.
Those are fantastic picks. And Lisa, what are yours? What are your choices?
I actually just narrowed down to one because I really like the Psylocke character ever since I was little. And I just thought that she was basically what Anime was saying about women, how they can be beautiful and all-powerful. And one great thing about her is her emotions are kind of tied to her superpower. So the more calm she is in a situation, the more powerful she gets. And so I kind of really like that idea. And, you know, she's beautiful and she's smart and she's very, very capable. And I love that.
As any woman is. And RuthAnn, what about you?
Yeah, so all these answers are so good, and we could probably do a discussion for an hour just about these specifically. And it was very hard to choose. So I went with 2 characters that I started with. So again, X-Men. So for me, it was Rogue, both her personality and character before the Savage Land, when she became super sexualized, and afterwards. But before, it was just her joining in and being so super strong, invulnerable, and also don't touch me. And she was like just a total, like, when she first started off, she was a total B word and just a jerk to everybody and like was so frustrated. But you saw that there was so much caused from her, you know, manipulative mother of Mystique, and getting her into the X-Men as well as Aurora Monroe, Storm, like seeing a character who started off as a kid as a pickpocket, you know, on the streets of in Africa, to then becoming a literal African goddess, and her whole story arc of when she accidentally killed somebody for the first time, and then when she lost her powers but was actually the best leader and still beat Scott Summers in a one-on-one battle to prove that she was the best leader. Like, there's just so much woman empowerment there. And then with some of the more the independent and smaller titles, like obviously I'm reading a lot of Aftershock now over the last few years, and characters like Body Mask, I absolutely enjoy the horror and the sensuality of that same duality we were kind of talking about earlier in one character, as well as detective badass stories like Bylines and Blood by Erica Schultz here at Aftershock. I love when, you know, as Anna Mia said, like, capturing the fact that women can be more than one thing. We're not just somebody who's so strong and powerful they can't handle any sort of relationships or family or a damsel in distress. Like, there's so much in between that women can do, and we're finally seeing that more and more in comic books.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you would sum it up that way, because that's something all of you guys touched on in your answers was the way women are portrayed in comics. And that's probably the most important aspect of storytelling. And I want to dig into that. So to that end, I'm wondering how you feel women are represented in comics. Do you feel like this representation has evolved? And if there's, you know, what work can be done in the future to push that evolution even further? So Harley, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've definitely seen a growth since we first had women in comics in the 30s, 40s, 50s, all that fun stuff. We've seen a growth, and part of that growth I have to attribute to the fact that we've actually been letting there be more women creators. Like, how can you have a true story about a woman if we don't have one at least told by a woman, right? Because only a woman knows a woman's strife and knows a woman's challenges. Like, obviously we have some amazing, like, male writers that do a phenomenal job with women, but having women be represented in a way that is equal to how men are represented in this industry is going to be about making sure that women actually are at the table. They're at the table, they're creating, they're making the decisions, they're making things happen. And that way we can have the portrayal of women continue to grow. Because again, like I've said, like with Alana and Saga, like she made me feel like she was a real woman the way she's written, you know, and that was Brian K. Vaughan, and created along with Fiona Staples. But we still don't, not every woman in comics today is still represented in the way that women are, which is diverse and smart and complicated and emotional and, you know, sometimes sexy. So I think just making sure we have more female creators is what's making it grow, so that we have a little more equality and so that women are being represented in a more authentic way.
Absolutely. A round of applause. So Mia, we'll come to you with that. What do you think?
I think, you know, kind of the same thing. When you look at comics back in the day, women were portrayed as like, you know, the helpless victim that needed to be helped. Or, you know, when I was growing up, it was like Archie comics, and I just thought it was all about relationships and, oh, girls and, you know, just shopping and all those other things, just very stereotypical. But now you just have such strong characters, and I feel like it's something that we've needed as women, because we've grown up with like having these powerful men. So it's nice to be able to see ourselves represented as being powerful. And true to what you were saying about you know, women being able to write for women. It's kind of funny when you look back at like literature back in the day that's written about women but by men. There's a lot of things that are kind of weird and things that women would never do, or things that they don't touch on, you know, like being a new mother in Saga and having to breastfeed and yet fight off, you know, and fight off people in battles. So it's kind of like you have this aspect of womanhood that a guy really, I don't think, can accurately portray. So it's great that we're being able to not only see that brought out in the comics, but women being able to express that openly.
And I think because of that, we're able to bring in new readers, because a lot of times, I think because there were so much of a male perspective projected onto female characters, that connection that was missing for us is being brought out a little bit more with female creators, and female editors, I think, are very important, as well as female marketing people, because we have to be able to, with marketing, we have to be able to see the perspective of the prospective reader and be able to make that connection for, sorry, there's construction around here, make that connection even before they look at the artwork or read the book. Because we want them to go out there and get it and give it a chance. I feel like a lot of times people don't give it a chance, because I personally didn't give comics exactly a chance when I was younger, because I thought I was just going to be like Batman, bam, pow, and things like that. And I wasn't really into that until somebody, when I was much younger, gave me something like Watchmen to read, when there was like depth of character and things like that, even though it was written by, you know, a male creator. I was able to connect with some of the female characters in that particular storyline, and I was like, oh, this is literature. This is not just goofing off.
Right.
Kind of thing. So, and that opened me up to other possibilities in comics. So
it's interesting that you make that point, because I actually had kind of a similar experience with comics. Like, it always felt like it was like a boy thing. And I didn't really honestly make the connection until about 5 years ago, which is unfortunately very recent, that like there were really great stories being told by women for women that felt as complicated as being a woman that exists in real life. And a lot of that is thanks in large part to you guys and all of your efforts. And so to that extent, I want to kind of zoom out and look at the comic book industry as a business. So what are some of the biggest challenges women working in the comic book industry face today? And what are maybe some ways we could overcome those or push through them? So RuthAnn, let's start with you.
Oh, well, I was actually typing in the chat that I didn't get to answer the last question. So I'm going to kind of do a little bit of both. No worries. Because like, I want to add on to what everybody said, because absolutely everything that was mentioned here before, because I'm so glad that over the years there's been more balance of the female characters in comics and not just focused on the impossible body shapes and positioning that we've seen too many times before, and that we're stepping away from the white, straight, cisgendered female character stereotypes as well. Because growing up as a queer tomboy in Vermont, I connected more to the male characters in a lot of ways, whether it was comic books or action movies or anime and that kind of stuff. But it was obviously something was missing because I still couldn't connect fully. But now we have these female characters being created that step away from that pigeonholing of the female characters that we're talking about. And I actually had Saga to talk about as well. And it's really nice to see that we're not just male counterparts, or to be plot points to be killed off for the male characters, growth and that kind of thing. So, but when it comes to the industry in general, it's just having more female voices, more voices that aren't, like I said before, aren't just white, cis, straight females as well, because we're seeing so much growth, especially in the transgender community as well. And seeing these creators who can really tell the stories from real, perspective is always so important. And I just feel like no matter what side of the industry you are on, or interested in, or talented in, the comic book industry needs more women. And just don't give up, because you will be a hero to somebody and to the next generation of women in comics. It's nothing is more important than representation and telling your story within the comic book world, because there isn't just the superhero world anymore. There's sci-fi, fantasy, slice of life, and everything in between. And I feel that for every generation, we have these comic book characters, male or female, that are very indicative and needed in the world today. And right now, we need women to be heroes.
Absolutely. Lisa, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I totally agree with RuthAnn there. My personal concern is, I think this is across all industries with wage equality. I feel like because there's more and more women in the industry, and I feel like now is the time to be able to kind of make more of a stand and support each other, and making sure that we are getting equal treatment behind the scenes as well when it comes to wage equality. And being able to see what people charge and people's contracts in the back. And I feel like women need to be able to stand up and be like, hey, no, I deserve more, and be able to just ask for it. And I think a lot of women still don't ask for it. And I'm encouraging all the women today, no matter what industry they're in, is to never be afraid to ask for it, and know your worth, and be able to say no to a job that potentially is not giving you what you deserve.
Here.
Right.
Yeah,
Harley, you want to jump in and add anything?
Yeah. Yes, to everything that both everything that's been said so far. Amazing and accurate. I think with our industry, just like any male-dominated industry, one thing that we deal with as women, and also as women, as people who are queer, as people of color, all of the people that aren't cis white males, is a lot of gatekeeping. And our industry is arguably kind of famous for it. So being a woman and speaking out isn't always treated well. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. I 100% agree. We need to encourage women to speak up for themselves, and to rep for themselves and for other women, and support all the women that are in your industry, because they're all amazing and in the same struggle as you. But part of the solution is to kind of, let's not gatekeep so much. Let's let women have a spot. And again, I said it earlier, I'm gonna say it again. Women need to be at the table. We need to be at the table. We need to have a chair. We need to be in the room where the decisions are being made, to be able to make progress in this industry in every way. When it comes to how we are represented, when it comes to equality, all of it, we need to be in the room at the table where decisions are being made. And that's where we need to get. And we need to have people we're going to do it, whether you let us or not. I feel like is kind of the vibe that we're getting right now, because we're all trying to speak up. But again, listen to the women around you, and people in the industry, listen to the women that you work with, and let them level up and let them have a seat at the table to help us have more equality.
Absolutely. And the men need to start supporting more. And like, you know, luckily, like I work with like Joe Pruitt and Mike Mars and Stefan Nielsen and Mark Hammond, who are just incredible guys, always like pushing us, the female coworkers, like farther and faster and to try new things. So we just, for all the men that are watching, we need you as well to be supportive. It's like we can be because women are amazing and we will push forward with everything, but we also need that male support as well.
100%. Yeah. My bosses at work are male, and they're just wonderful. Shout out to Philip and Josh. They're wonderful, and I feel very supported where I'm at. But the thing is that, like, I've been in this industry for like getting close to a decade, doing more than just publishing side, doing the actual like retail side as well, and at more than one publishing house. And I have to say, like, we all of us here in this room can agree that we haven't always felt supported, and a lot of times we've probably even felt like attacked at points in our industry as women. So men, please support us. Women, we're going to support each other. But yeah, men, help us out.
Step up.
No, it really is a team effort. Like it comes from all sides, and everyone's got to pitch in for. We can all do better if we all do better. Yeah. Mia, what do you guys say? Because I think you have a bit of an interesting perspective, being both a cosplayer and a creator. Mia, you might be muted.
Oh, there we go. So yeah, this is an interesting perspective for me because I literally was thrown into the world of comics. And I am so thankful for the guys at Dynamite for reaching out to me and asking me, you know, having just seen my nonfiction writing work, asking me if I'd like to write a comic and putting their faith in me completely, which has been amazing. And I'm so grateful for it. But as Lisa was saying, for me jumping into this, the whole conversation of like pay rates, it's not something that's discussed really in comics, you know, outside of any other, you know, company, but really in comics, it's not really talked about. And then especially knowing, because I was in recruiting before, you know, I know that women's pay rates are generally lower than men's, and you know, so for me that was something that I'm still like, I don't really know, and I wish it was something that was talked about more. But now that my comic has come out, I think my worries have now switched to the realization that people are going to be reading my work. And, you know, yeah, there's going to be reviews, and there are going to be, you know, those negative people that are going to look at me as someone who comes from the cosplay world, a very creative and you know, very physical at times, you know. It has to do with appearances, and you know, it's that transition from being seen as a face and a body and a creator of objects that, you know, are tangible costumes and whatnot, to someone who is being seen for their writing and kind of that intellectual aspect. So I worry that that's going to be something that I'm going to at some point have to face. But I feel very much more supported now, and especially with this panel, and realizing that there's a lot of women in comics that stand together for each other, and it's just about finding that pack, I guess.
That's a fantastic way to look at it too. So before we move on to our next question, we got some comments from our viewers. Let's check in with them. Brad says, "I support you." Thanks, Brad. Carrie says, "It's important for women, for anyone, to be able to internalize the story as if women are being seen from a woman's eye." Absolutely. Dave says, "I appreciate these viewpoints so much. #growth. James says, "One of my heroes in the indie world was Wendy Heaney, this is really small, who broke new ground for indie comics in the 1970s and 1980s. Is there a way women creators can help the industry break outside of the superhero genre into other types of stories?" That's a fantastic question. Who wants to tackle that?
You got to give it a shot. To pitch to independent publishers, because especially ones that are creator-owned IPs, because that
that is the place that you can get the most expansion of your own IP that doesn't have to be superheroes. It doesn't have to be sci-fi fan. It can be whatever you want it to be, and you don't have to be beholden to an already created IP. So between publishers as well as self-publishing and web comics, I mean, we're seeing that as a huge explosion for new female creators as well.
Absolutely. That's a great point. That's actually how I found one of my favorite female creators, which is Alice Oseman, who does the Heartstopper series.
Yes.
And I found her on Tapas, and then found out that her books are getting published through Hachette and Scholastic, which is great, by the way. If you haven't read Heartstopper, big recommend.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back to these questions here, which I've lost.
Well, if you have a second, I actually have a question for the group, because we're obviously looking at very beautiful ladies here, and kind of going off of one thing that Anna Mia said, of sometimes there is a stigma to that, especially working in a male-dominated field. Have you felt that your looks have hindered or helped you more in this industry when it comes to being in a male-dominated industry?
I don't know if it's helped or hurt, but it's been commented on, which is just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Because you have those moments where you're like, what? When I ran a shop, many times I had gentlemen come in and look at me and go, and not ask me any questions about comics. And when I asked if I could help them, they'd go, well, you don't know anything. And I'd be like, I mean, I work in a comic book shop. And they'd go, oh, well, you're here because you look like that. And I was like, oh. Like, what do you say to that? And also, well, I'm someone who's very about, maybe we don't comment on other people's appearance a lot, because people can't control an appearance. That's genetics. We control what's here and what's here. Maybe let's focus on that.
Yeah.
I do have to say that when I enter the industry, I don't think I've ever met any male professionals in the industry that has ever been like that. I have met fans that have been like that. And I have had, sorry about the noise, I've had people warn me about certain business people, but that has never been the case when I had my interactions with them. I used to visit comic book shops a lot, and some of the retailers would warn me, like, hey, you might not want to go to that particular store because they still have, sexy magazines on the wall and things like that. And then when I encountered them, I think a lot of it is maybe they haven't met female professionals before. And then we have the opportunity as female professionals in the comic book industry to give them the impression that, that we aren't what their stereotypes are of women in the industry. Right. And I think having somebody like Anna Mia go out there and be a creator as well as a cosplayer will help, I think everybody kind of change people's perspective a little bit, because she's very well spoken, very likable. I watch her daily, her weekly new comic book things on the internet all the time. I love it. So I think she's going to be able to give people a different perspective and break that stereotype of cosplayers versus creators and things like that. You can be anything and be able to do anything in this industry.
I'm just so glad, Lisa, that you haven't experienced harassment on the professional level. I am so glad, because I think you were the first female in comic books that I've heard that hasn't had that happen yet. So I'm really, really glad. So hopefully we are headed to a better place with that.
Absolutely. I hope.
Yeah, I've gotten really lucky that I've worked with some great people, and there is that pressure, as Lisa was saying, to be this cosplayer who's jumping into the comic world, and I kind of feel like, all right, I have to kind of set an example. And so it was, learning how to write a comic script in a week and then putting it out there in front of them, and trying to impress as much as I can to leave that mark. They went into it like, okay, well, we'll give you a co-writer. And then a week later, I'm like, no, here's my script. And they were like, oh, okay, well, you don't need one. And I'm like, okay, see, this is it. Put your faith in women. We can do this. Just because I'm a cosplayer, look what I did. I handed you a whole script, and, we're capable of more than I think people give us credit for. Not that I think that they thought that, but, it's that, all right, I have to prove myself to kind of help open doorways, I think. So hopefully I can do that. I'm doing it.
So far, you're killing it.
Mhm.
And it is a bit of a chicken and egg thing to some extent. Like, we talked about earlier, having characters that represent like the duality of women, like your femininity and your power, but also like the women that are working in comics are also those things. So you want to have characters that reflect real life, but you need to have real life that reflects your characters. So it's a balancing act. And also, speaking of something else we mentioned earlier, RuthAnn, you talked about bringing more voices into the comic book industry, more inclusive voices, and Harley, you mentioned that as well. And we do want to make comic books as inclusive of a space as possible. So to that end, how do you think we can encourage more women to get involved in the comic book industry, and be that as creators, editors, or even readers? What are some assistance we can give to them? And let's start with you, RuthAnn, since you were the one that brought this up earlier.
Yeah, I would say for publishers to be more open to new writers and for new IPs and for more creator-owned stuff, and to actually reach out, whether it's doing programs for finding more women in comics, or different ethnicities in comics, different sexuality, different, all of it, just because there's just so many different varieties and flavors that are out there that we've been so pigeonholed for so long. So on the professional side of things, I think it takes the publishers to be more open-minded and to actively search for different stories and different viewpoints, as well as consumers start taking time to really research who's writing, who's doing these things, buy up new, more independent titles focused on female, or, like there's some incredible comic books coming out right now of all different races and sexualities and genders, and to just like actively seek those out as well. And for anybody who is, not a white cis straight male, go out there, come up with your stories, really pitch them, do your own Kickstarter to start your own comic book, and then who knows, you'll get picked up by somebody. So it's just it's going to take a lot of multifaceted changes in the industry to really get that to the forefront and not have it be such a white male dominated industry, whether on the actual pages itself or the creators behind them.
Absolutely. Harley, what do you want to add to this?
I mean, for sure, all of that, I think, agreed. A huge part of it is publishers take a chance. Actually, like, for the people who submit your stories, I know that we don't always have time, but take time to read the stories that are from other people's perspectives, and base it off the talent and the story that's being told. Even if it's an unknown writer, which I know that Boom has done that quite a few times. We like finding just great stories. My other thing I would suggest is talk to us. You have all these women in this room right here. We are open books. I think that all of us would be open, and if anyone doesn't agree, please say so. I don't speak for everybody. I speak for myself. Talk to us. We're all open to getting messages, through social media, which we're going to give you our handles and stuff at the end. Talk to us, ask us questions, talk to other women who are in this industry who are doing it. If you want to do it too, you can. We did it. Yeah. You got this. Just talk to us.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, happy to answer any questions. Mia, want to jump in?
Honestly, I think my big thing is publishers realizing that, women are big fans of comics. I think they're starting to get to understand that more, that there is a huge fan base of women in comics, and that we're ready for stuff for us. We want stuff for us. I think, in the past, as viewing cosplayers, I think sometimes publishers think, oh, well, they're just wearing the costumes, and they forget that we're fans because we read the comics, or we watch the movies, or we take all the media in that we can, so that way we want to become this character. So I just think that there's this still this lingering idea that women aren't quite as into comics as they really are, and so I'm hoping that publishers start really running with this idea of like embracing this ever-growing audience that they've got.
Absolutely. And especially, I kind of feel like with the way comics are hitting mainstream, where Star Wars and Marvel is concerned, like, you have a large audience that wants to find a way in, that wants to be active in this community. So if you can give them that through line, they'll definitely take it.
Yeah, and just to kind of bring up the cosplay aspect of the whole industry in itself, just Anamia, thank you, and thank you to all cosplayers out there, because it's actually thanks to you guys that this industry has been reinvigorated through conventions and all that kind of stuff. Because if you ask anybody who knows nothing about comics, like if I ask my Aunt Fran in Vermont about Comic-Con, she'll be like, "Oh, is that the thing that they go dress up as? Like, to you?" I'm like, no, I don't, but they get it. That's what's caused like conventions to be more popular again, and brings a lot of attention to these characters. And it doesn't have to be just, you know, because they're sexy or whatever. That's just a byproduct of the characters themselves. So I just thank you, Anamia, and to all the cosplayers out there for reinvigorating the industry.
I second that. Lisa, you're back. Would you like to jump in and add something?
I don't know where we left off. My computer overheated, shut down briefly, and then just popped back up.
So we were talking about what kind of ways that there are to help get women more involved in the comic book community, be that as creators or readers or editors or whatever.
I think, believe it or not, how I got into the industry had to do a lot with social media. So all the editors, I think everybody on here on social media, and don't be afraid to just reach out to anybody in the comic book industry, as long as you're friendly, respectful. If you have a question, just ask. You'd be surprised how friendly everybody is in the industry. Despite a few very noisy people, they're usually very friendly and they're very welcoming, and they do want to help each other out. So if there's a fan out there who's want to break into the industry, start doing it. Start writing, creating, and sharing, because there really is a strong community in comics. I feel like most of us know what it's like to be outsiders, or and we have all that in common. And I think that makes us great storytellers, and then just welcoming people into the fold. So.
Absolutely. So we've said all of this. So on top of all of our commentary, let's make some recommendations, right? Let's send our viewers off with some homework. So what are your reading recommendations for comics by female creators? And Mia, we're going to start with you. If you don't plug yourself, that's a missed opportunity.
So yeah, I will go ahead and plug my comic. So go ahead and pick up Betty Page, The Alien Agenda at your local comic shop. The first issue just came out. I'm in love with the character and the way that I've been kind of molding her and creating her. And what I also love is I've given her a team of women in this series to work with. So you get to see 3 very smart, beautiful women basically hunting down alien artifacts. So go pick it up. Give it a chance. Maybe that'll encourage Dynamite and other companies to take a chance on women in parts of the geek community that aren't necessarily directly in comics. Yeah.
All right, RuthAnn, what are some of your recommendations?
I mentioned her before, Stephanie Phillips. She's done a lot of work with us at Aftershock as well as DC. She has an incredible voice. She does so many different dynamic female characters. It's a long, long list, as well as Marguerite Bennett. If you're looking for something, a long-standing title to read that's just mind-blowing, that does have a female lead. It's called... oh wow, my poor brain just shut down. Animosity, and that's just an incredible world. As well as, if you one of my favorite titles, because it's so much fun to describe, which is a Victorian lesbian body horror comic book called Insects. So obviously mature audiences only, but this is a very fun foyer into the lesbian scene, as well as it's so much fun, and it's dark and twisty. But and then just get to your local comic book shop and check for every female name, and just pick something out every new comic book day.
I support that. Animosity is super good, by the way. Big fan. Harley, what are your choices?
Oh goodness, I'm like so many.
Panic.
I'm gonna go with my favorites first, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So I'm a huge fan of. If you guys haven't read Ladykiller, Ladykiller is amazing. It's going to be a TV show. So that's a great female created. So the first book is like, one of the co-writers is technically male, but I know him and he was like, I barely did anything. She did everything. So Ladykiller for sure. If you like a 1960s housewife who's also an assassin, which who doesn't?
Love that.
So good. Yeah. So
Yes.
with Joelle Jones you probably, if you are into DC, you know her from Catwoman right now, but she's just amazing. Extremely talented human. I'm also like a big fan of Cecil Castellucci. So Cecil Castellucci is like a lot more like, she started doing very indie stuff, and her stuff is always just has this amazing touch of emotion. She recently did like kind of more an autobiographical one called Girls on Film, which is about herself, but she's done so many. Soupy Leaves Home, if you want to like cry a little bit. It's about a young girl who basically is in an abusive situation and leaves during the Depression, and then just goes and becomes part of the homeless community, but like finds her people there. It's really amazing. It's beautiful, but she does a lot of really great stuff. Girl on Film was amazing. And just anything by Jodie Hauser, amazing. Obviously Kelly Sue DeConnick, Gail Simone, all of those people. And then for Boom, I'd say if you haven't read Lumberjanes, I feel like Lumberjanes, there is a character that everybody identifies with in Lumberjanes, because there's so many different types of women in that book, and young women. So Lumberjanes is like a must read. If you haven't read Lumberjanes, go read Lumberjanes. You know, Noelle Stevenson, Chen Waters, just do it.
Yeah. All right. And Lisa, what are some of your recommendations?
Actually, with Top Cow, I actually did a newsletter blast recently that had all our female Top Cow creators. One of them is actually Stephanie Phillips. She's written for, I think, all the publishers by this point, and she's just fabulous. And she writes multiple genres and things like that. And one of the books that she has out is called A Man Among E, which is like pirates and things like that, which is great. And then also, by the way, going back to the question of how to get people into comics a little bit more, Top Cow actually, I think she self-published or something like that prior to becoming one of the winners of Top Cow's talent hunt that we do every single year since I think 2014 or something like that. So that's another way if you want to get into comics, to go through that process, because Top Cow really breaks down what we need for a writer, with samples of what we like to see in a script and things like that, as well as artwork. But yeah, Stephanie Phillips is a great one. I've been reading a lot more of Top Cow things by Ishan Lee, and then also Linda Sejic. She has this really great book called Punderworld, which kind of dips into Greek mythology as well as, relationships and things like that. So it's different, which is why I think we're talking here is about how we're bringing new readers into comics and then bring female voices in, and how the stories are very different from the traditional superhero stuff.
Well, that's what we're here to plug, is all of the different stories that you can find at your local comic book shop. So let's check in on our viewers. We got some comments here. Kyle says, favorite artist, Ramona Fradden plus Jill Thompson, Colleen Doran, June Bregman, Pia Guerrera, Nicola Scott, writers Louise Simonsen, Anne Nesenti, and Marjorie Louis. Good choices. Carrie says, picked up the first issue of your story arc, Anemia. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Carrie.
Troy Jeffrey Allen, PREVIEWSworld's very own Troy Jeffrey Allen is
Hey,
enjoying our
Troy.
roundtable. And he's also
amazing.
All right, nice.
Yeah, she's amazing. She is an amazing human. I have also met her many times.
And Second Street Marvel says, Stephanie Phillips is good. One of my favorite current artists is Corinne Howell and Skylar Patridge. And Carrie also says, Lumberjanes is awesome. Have it all on my grandma's bookshelf, waiting for the wee girlies to grow up enough for it.
Oh, yay.
Yes, I say hand it to them at like 11.
Oh, but yeah, solid.
As long as they're ready to read it and they feel like confident enough reading it, 11 and up for Lumberjanes, because it just is so great. It's so great. It makes you feel good about life as a woman.
Got to start them early.
You do.
All right. Well, I think we're coming to the end here with our Women in Comics Roundtable. But before we get out of here, where can everybody find you, lovely ladies? Let's go around and plug your socials and any projects you're working on and where everyone can find you. So, Anamia, start us off.
So you can find me on all the social media under Anamia Official, and then go make sure to pick up the first issue of my comic series. I think you can pre-order issues 2 and 3 now, because I have like a whole nother one I'm like in the middle of writing right now that I'm hoping to pitch. So yeah, hopefully the first one will go good, so they'll want to pick up another one. So yeah.
Fantastic. RuthAnn, what about you? Where can everyone find you?
Yeah, you can find me all over the social media under Ru_Thompson. So that's just RU. My name is too long without the underscore. And there will be some projects that I'll be announcing very soon, but I'll still be doing all of my live streams with Aftershock. So every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time, I do my epicenter to talk about all the comic book coming out for New Comic Book Day. And then we have our happy hour live stream every other week. So coming up is Ryan Parrott next Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So pour yourself a drink and join us to chat with him. And if you are a D&D fan, join me every Sunday night on the Whiskey and Waffles Twitch, and I play a really cool female character that I created myself. So yeah, so any flavor of nerd, you can just come on down and we'll chat either anime, D&D, Star Trek, for days. So come on down.
Love that. Lisa, where can people find you?
People can find me at the Woo Report on all the different social media platforms. And then also I run all of Top Cow's social media. So if you have any questions relating to Top Cow, please message me there.
Fantastic. And Harley, where can people find you?
You can find me on just basically Instagram, because I don't really do Twitter, but it's at Miss MS Harley R. Yeah, if you guys want book recommendations, that's what I do a lot on like my stories and some of my posts. And make sure you guys also follow Boom Studios. So Boom Studios for Instagram is Boom_Studios, and then for Twitter it's Boom Studios. Because then you can also ask me questions about Boom stuff, not on their social media, but if you want to ask it on mine or on theirs, because I don't run Boom social media.
Fair enough. If you want to find, who do we get? Kyle saying, great talk with the panel. Thank you for joining us, Kyle. Monkey Jeebus says, yes, great panel and love hearing the different perspectives in comics. If you want to find me on social media, you can find me at Free Comic Book Day, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everything. And reminder, May 7th at your local comic shop is Free Comic Book Day. If you want to get your hands on some comics for free and try a bunch of stuff out, that's your place to do it. Thank you so much to all of you ladies for joining us today and sharing your insight and your perspectives. Thank you to everyone who tuned in to hang out with us. You can find more Women in Comics content over on PREVIEWSworld.com, including interviews, trailers, and more. Until next time, I'm Ashton, and I'll see you at the Spinner Rack.